Go live. Going live. Oh, we're live. We're live. It's alive. It's alive. I don't know what to think of this. Uh, it might be doing okay. It might be doing what it's supposed to. I don't know. Select stream. Generated key stream URL. Backup server URL. DVR. What is DVR? I don't know what DVR means. I'm turning into an old fart. How does this work? I don't know. You know what? You know what? All that food Nazi crap that the schools have been getting into. Apparently, a 9-year-old kid got caught selling hot Cheetos. Spicy Cheetos in little baggies for 25 cents at school. Little teeny bags with like 3 or 4 Cheetos in each. And they busted him for it, like he was a drug dealer or something. These people, they kidnap our children from us at gunpoint, indoctrinate them in crap, and won't even feed them properly. And get all bitchy and self-righteous when their parents give them a treat. Little girl goes to school, has a cupcake in her lunch, and the teacher confiscates it and replaces it with a note for her mom. Why? Homeschooling advocates have been screaming this for decades. Why is nobody listening? Why are we letting the government kidnap our children? I found, back before, public education is a little bit less than 100 years, a little bit older than 100 years, about 120 years old. And if we had listened to what these people, the advocates for it, were openly saying, 9/10 of the American people would have pulled a gun and shot the man right in the face. Because his first principle, remove the children from the influence of their parents. That was the goal. That's the reason kindergarten was created, to remove children, and they openly said it. We need to remove the children from the influence of their parents at an earlier age. And the purpose of the school was to create drones, worker ants, for the factories they foresaw lining the country from horizon to horizon. We were not supposed to be a independent, free-thinking people. We were supposed to be chattel. And for over 100 years, they've been confiscating our children. The first thing they teach our children is that their parents are ignorant and uneducated and just don't understand. And from there it's all downhill. It's the public education system was it was basically orchestrated treason against the American people. If 100 years ago, if they had proposed to do to our children all at once what they have been doing slowly over and over again over a 12-year period. We would have been down at the local school board with a rope and a gun. But the American people, you can never underestimate the stupidity of the American people. What they really saw, what most people saw, free babysitting, basically, and a chance to get the kids out of the house for 6 to 8 hours a day. And the parents roll freedom. Yeah, this is what makes me so angry. I saw these commercials, Staples was doing an ad, and they were playing, it was the most wonderful time of the year. And the parents is and the fathers dancing down the aisles of Staples, picking out their children's school materials, and he said, they're going back. It's the most wonderful, it's celebrating. Getting, handing their children over to people they wouldn't trust with their silverware. It just makes me angry. The public school system is treason against the people of the United States. Oh, just part of it just breaks me sometimes realizing. I saw a really stupid one of these stupid animal activist memes. They say, more people have been killed by vending machines falling over than by snakes. So why don't you see grannies killing vending machines with a rake? I'm like, you dumb chuckle fuck. Pardon my language. I didn't realize it just fell out of my. This is a dumb chucklehead, man. Ah, and the feed's going screwy again. Great, great, great. I don't do anything. I don't change anything, and they still can't. Their feed's still crap. Uh, but I'm sorry. How much of a schmuck do you have to be? Yeah, why aren't you attacking a vending machine with a rake with a garden hoe? Because you incredible schmuck. Vending machines don't lie in the grass waiting to bite somebody who steps too close. It's amazing. Oh, leave the snakes be, leave the snakes be. They're good for they kill mice. Blah 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 blah. And very few of them are poisonous. And these people, these people, these are the same people that would throw a screaming fit if they saw any untoward animals or life forms in their own backyard. They're fine with they're fine with pushing the rest of us to live this way. You know. I really hope the sound bleeped out over that. I said a bad swear word just a little while ago, but dang, I just pushed to the limit on something. Marijuana could give us false memories. It's amazing the ridiculous, ridiculous stories. Every other week there's a new story about how they might have discovered some new scary thing that marijuana does to us. Might have. Then you never hear anything more about it. You don't, no more research is done, strangely enough, until they find some other new bizarre effect that it's supposed to have. There's just a huge section of the population who is invested too much emotionally in this near religious belief in the demonic evil nature of a naturally occurring herb. You misuse it. You misuse it. It's bad. Of course, you misuse anything. It's bad. But by and large, marijuana medically, marijuana has been has does the least physical harm of all the illicit drugs out there, and it is far less. It is not even as harmful as the other drugs in its own government category. Kicker is they catalog it with the same with stuff that'll practically make your brains leak out your ears. Society denied an incredibly useful plant, incredibly useful medicine and drug because somebody wanted to make political hash. And scaring poorly informed middle Americans with fairy tales about a drug is the way to go. I'm sorry, I have been talking into an empty microphone this entire time, haven't I? Doggone it. Okay, can you hear me out there now? Please type something. Stupid off switch. It's a little press button. If I bump it against something too hard, that was my fault. Uh, Controversy. Oh, this. I have no idea how long I've been running this live stream with a turned on microphone. At least 15 minutes. At least 15 minutes I've been running it without a mic. Please type something. Stupid off switch. It's a little press button. If I bump it against something too hard, I hate how my voice sounds. I really do. They found out that it's more than they've been scientists have been doing some sort of weird ear tests, and they found out that well, it's more than just our voice sounding different, because it's well, it does sound different. We are averse to it. They had some big long explanation. Didn't really discover anything of value, I don't think. Anyway, well, this has been running for 45 minutes. I turned off the microphone to take a drink and a bite of my sandwich and forgot to turn it back on, so it's been about 15 minutes. Crap, I'm not editing it. I was throwing out the controversial thought that we should reevaluate It's been 100 years. Maybe we should reevaluate the idea of giving women the vote. Considering considering how women vote today, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. When the vast majority all these women voters go out there and they vote for Hillary Clinton for no other reason than that she's female. And the habit of women to vote for superficial reasons is nothing new. All the way back to Kennedy, JFK. He got a surprisingly huge female voter turnout, and they interviewed the women. They did a survey and a study, and the women flat out basically said that they voted for him because they liked his hair. Oh, he has nice hair. He's so young. He isn't bald and old and ugly. He's young and he's handsome and he's virile looking and and he looks basically he looked like somebody they wanted to hump. They saw that, and then a cave woman thing jumped out from behind the couch and said, "Must breed with him," and they voted for him. Entire generation of women voting with their ovaries. Big warning sign, okay? Big warning sign that the whole women's vote thing should have been under question. And what I've said now, what needs to be determined, is this a women thing or is it a cultural, cultural in general thing? Because I have noted that there is a an increasingly depressing tendency, first of all, of our society to treat the vote not as a serious responsibility for civic-minded citizens, but as a trophy and a status symbol for various ethnic groups, for various ethnic groups and minorities and subsets of the population, to prove their status. The old star-bellied Sneetches routine. And I mean, we had We had a man who was elected under the false pretense that he was an African American, solely because he had dark skin. If Obama had been white, he never would have won. And that's a tragedy. That's farcical. And no, he's not African American. He's Kenyan. He's half Kenyan and half white. He is not what we mean by African American. He is not a descendant of the slaves from the Civil War era. He's so let's just skip right over that one. And you had women going out in vagina hats to vote for Hillary Clinton solely because she's a woman. People electing, you know, people going out and pushing to get homeless people, into the voting booths. Here we'll give you a pack of cigarettes if you go. Actually happened. Because people, the majority of people don't vote. The majority of people don't vote, but if you told them they weren't allowed to, you'd have a fight on your hands. Not because they want to take part in the governing of their society, but because being able to vote is a status symbol. Star-bellied sneeches. And this is why the founding fathers they established that it was they weren't being racist or sexist when they said it was supposed to be male landowners who were the only ones who were allowed to vote. They wanted, they weren't being classist either. They were saying a person who owned land had a vested interest in the well-being of the community. If you own a house in a neighborhood, you want that neighborhood to look pretty good. That's the whole idea behind HMOs, homeowners associations. Not HMOs, HOAs. But anyway, but yeah, they want people who want to have the vote now. They want the vote so that they can brag they have the vote. I got the vote. So there, yeah. Got a star on my sneech belly. Yeah? And our society needs something. We need some system that demands if somebody wants to vote, they have to show a commitment to the concept. That they want to be a serious statesperson. They want to be a serious citizen, and they take the vote, the idea of the vote seriously. They're not just voting to make a symbolic gesture. And they're not just demanding the vote to, have a status symbol, to get a gold star stuck on their forehead. Whoop-de-doo. Some people have suggested that only those who have served the military or in some fashion or served the society in some fashion like that should be allowed to vote. And I'm like, no, thank you. Not interested in Spartacus. I'm not interested in Sparta 2.0. No, not interested. That's how you end up with a military society. No. There's got to be something, reading, literacy tests was one thing they used to have. But then the civil rights movement came along and said it was bigoted to expect anybody to read. Of course, you had people down in the South that were abusing, they'd pull crap like pulling out a Chinese newspaper for people they didn't want to vote. They'd test, can you read this? And they'd hand them a Chinese newspaper. Psst. typical bigoted idiots ruined it, and you ruin the system for everyone. But being able to read and write and do basic math and pass a basic civics test, a very simple civics test. I mean, talking at least kindergarten level, first grade level, and to get a vote. People who don't know how the government is run should not be having a say in it. I guarantee you, a vast majority of these snotty college-age teenage girls wouldn't be able to pass a civics test if they studied for a year ahead of time. Heads full of air and their boobs full of silicone. Yeah. Uh, just don't ask me why I got off on that tangent. I've been stuck on it for 45 minutes, and you only heard about 15 of it. So, moving on, moving on, moving on. Boy. Let's see, let's see, let's see. Sort of stewing here, trying to find something else. Okay, I haven't got anything new out. Nothing new yet. But I've got commission for one Valentine's Day card so far. One for Daniel Meyer rather. Don't know why I keep calling him James. It's just okay. I gotta write him. Ask him. Does he want? What kind of? You just gotta sort of ballpark it here for me a little bit. Give me a hint. Wolf and Otter, your choice of scene. Okay, that's it. That's always. This is the fun thing when I'm stumped, I bunt. This is what you type in. Okay, this is the progress so far, and do you have any contributions you'd like to make? Any suggestions you'd like to make? And then Then I can breathe for a few seconds, you know. Okay, Scribbler posted Windfall this month. Oh, the audio fic. Yeah, I remember Windfall. Was that the My Little Pony fan fiction? Set a few years in the future, and Fluttershy was having her first baby, and literally the entire cast was freaking out trying to get there to be there for her. Yeah, I remember reading that. It was brilliant. And then the sequel, which was I forget what the name of the sequel was, but it was I couldn't give. I mean, I recommended that particular story even higher than I recommended uh, even higher than I recommended Past Sins. It was not Windfall. It was called Sky something. Sky. Well, I can't remember. It basically starts out that Twilight Sparkle realizes that a lot of her friends, a lot of her friends are having kids, and some of these kids have wings while their parents don't, and some of the parents have wings and their kids don't. And she's hearing stories about foundling babies being left because the Pegasi parents were too afraid to try and raise a child with no wings in in their airborne city. And anyway, she sits down and she starts designing the first pair of artificial wings. And through various circumstances, it ends up, she goes to get a stamp of approval from the princess as a royal commission, and she Apple Bloom, a full-grown Apple Bloom, and a full-grown Pipsqueak are all partners in this endeavor, and their old rival, the Flim Flam brothers, hear about it, and Diamond Tiara hears about it. Diamond Tiara is all grown up, and she married uh, Prince. What was his name? Prince Pureblood. Not Pureblood. Not Prince Blueblood. She married Prince Blueblood, and and not what you call a loving marriage, but it was brilliantly written, and it ends up that it turns into a great race story where they literally where these two teams and dozens of other flying teams are racing around the circumnavigating Equestria. I don't know if that's the term for it. They're flying around the country of Equestria all the way around, and it was a fun. I want to pick it up and read it again now that I'm thinking about it. It was a fun read. I've always been partial to great race uh, movies. Ben Shakar, I don't know. If it's not the windfall if it's not the windfall story I'm thinking of, then I don't know what to tell you. Windfall, windfall, windfall. Yeah, it's that's the one I'm thinking of. Ponytails, My Little Pony fanfic, Windfall, the complete story. There is a sequel. I'm repeating myself, and I can't remember the name to. But anyway, I love that. I loved Windfall. I remember reading that story, and I remember reading his the sequel. And there was a sequel after that where Twilight Sparkle, along with the great and powerful Trixie, end up getting into movies. And I don't. I think that story was. I haven't seen hide nor hair of that story since then. Let me see if I can find it. I'm gonna pull up the link and see if they have a link to the story, the written version of the story. Original fic. Here we go. Yeah. Oh, darn it. There we go. Windfall by Warren Hutch. Stories, 15 stories. Here we go. Let's see. Ah, yes. Okay. I read several of these. They were quite good. Earth and Sky. That was the name of the story. It was simply brilliant. It was published all the way back in 2012 and completed in January 2013. That's how most fan fictions are. Anyway, well, apparently Warren Hutch hasn't been. He was last seen January 17th. He hasn't. There's only been 2 chapters of movie magic written. That's the third in the series. It's a sequel to Earth and Sky. And call me bummed out. I'm so depressed. I hope we didn't have art, author existence failure. I'm bummed out. I'll be reading some chain of fan fictions. Oh man, this artist, they died in 2015. Anyway, Windfall, Earth and Sky, and the 2 chapters of movie magic. I'm so sad. I'm so bummed out. It's a bummer. But oh well, it's only been 6 years. Yeah, I mean, I thought Fluttermack, I know that the canon ship is with Big Mac and that one pony Sugar Bell, which they brought in out of the blue, and I'm like looking, I was almost sitting there looking at the writers, going, so what's wrong with Fluttershy, huh? Huh? Got something wrong with my Fluttershy, huh? It just seemed like painfully obvious, almost. Big Mac being this big, strong, quiet type, and Fluttershy being the small, meek, quiet type. And it seemed to me kind of obvious that she'd gravitate toward him because he would make her feel safe. Now you got all these circus freaks matching her up with Discord, for crying out loud. And I'm going, my brain's just hearing that and going, no, hell no, actually. Okay, one of these days I'm just gonna have to take an entire day and sit down and watch the episode. Watch. I haven't seen anything since season 6. I'm just gonna have to sit down and force myself to watch the whole series all the way through to the end, to the gruesome end, just so I have footing rather, as some way, where to stand on the changes they made in the story over the years. Getting old when that becomes an agenda. I'm all out of trash bags. I need more trash bags. I got trash just sort of floating around here now. Uh, let's see. I got an interesting question here. It was on Quora. Opinion by mob rule. But why does it seem that most Hermione shippers dislike Hermione? How do they love the ship between Hermione and Ron, and yet dislike Hermione at the same time? And my answer was, it's not that they dislike Hermione; it's they dislike what's been done with her. In the books, she was the book smart girl. She was clever. She was not, she was capable, but she was also flawed. She was a teacher's pet and annoyingly condescending to everyone around her. And and the thing of it was is that she was Ron's perfect foil because of all the characters, whenever she started up with her shenanigans, started up with her routine, Ron was the only one that would put her in her place. And I mean, even from the early books, it was painfully obvious. They argued like an old married couple, as the saying goes. Now, here's something to chew on. Old married couples don't argue all the time because they're unhappy. Old married couples argue all the time because they've lived with this person for years and they know they're secure enough in their relationship that they know that an argument or even an all-out row won't mean the end of the world. The ones you got to watch out for are those girls. Oh, let's not fight, honey. No, let's not fight. No, we must get along, and then they just like a firecracker thrown into a fireworks factory. Boom! Uh, Ron and Hermione. Yeah, you had to pay attention. Of course, the protagonist being, it was the stories. Again, one of the main flaws of the Harry Potter stories is that they were all through the eyes of Harry Potter. Every single chapter, except one chapter in the very first book and one chapter in the very last book, were all seen through Harry Potter's eyes, even when it should have been, when it was obviously boring the audience to tears. In the last book, they're wandering all over the countryside looking for these Horcruxes. They don't know where to do. Basically just keeping on the move and hiding. All the action is happening everywhere else, and they hear about it from time to time through the Wizarding Wireless. This is where the writer Rowling should have taken a break and started showing chapters of the adventures of every other damn character in her books. But no, we had to sit there in that tent with Ron, Harry, and Hermione, for chapter after chapter after chapter, listening to the rainfall. But anyway, in the books, Ron and Hermione were both competent but flawed characters. With their own virtues and vices and unique characteristics. But the movies just buggered that all up. They turned Hermione into witchy Wonder Woman, Princess Perfect, and they turned Ron into the goofy, gormless village idiot comic relief. The big, hilarious, cowardly goof, which was not him at all. And it started right in the very first movie when they stole Ron's best lines and gave them to Hermione. And that's why none of the other people who have come after, the people who read the books first, are a lot more sympathetic towards Ron and a lot less tolerant of the angelically perfectly perfect Hermione portrayals you see in most fan fictions. Hermione was supposed to be the book smart one. Ron was supposed to be the street smart one. He was, I don't think Rowling followed through on that quite enough. They needed to show more of Ron knowing his way around the Wizarding World, where Hermione and Harry should have been, lost at sea. Because, Ron was a born and raised wizard who lived in the Wizarding World his entire life. And it shows there are certain passages where he does, but it doesn't happen often enough. But anyway, it was supposed to be Hermione was the book smart one, he was the street smart one, and between them, they were supposed to be the Spock and McCoy to Harry's Captain Kirk. For a loose example. Okay, I'm getting really tired of these notices. I'll go browsing and say, hey there, we see you're using ad block. And I'm like, this is not encouraging me to open up my computer to your website. In fact, it is encouraging me to take an oath to never buy anything you advertise. You know what I'm saying? Uh, Season 9 is where they really start kicking in with the Snowflake Warrior Special, huh? It's My Little Pony. They start doing the SJW stuff. Let me guess. Implied gay relationships. Uh, Women good, men evil, etc., etc., etc. I've said this before. Yeah, you hear more and more about these men getting, these transsexuals. The vast majority. Have you noticed that the majority of them seem to be men, quote unquote, transitioning to women? Take a wild guess as to why that's happening. Might have something to do with the fact that we live in a society where women are glorified while men are demonized. You don't have to be very old or very smart or very experienced or very mature to look at the world, the way it treats boys and men versus the way it treats women, and get it in your head that you kind of wish that you were a pretty princess too. And wish it hard enough to convince yourself that you really should have been born with a vagina. I've known it my whole life. Yeah, probably about the same point that you noticed that women were getting favoritism in some social situation that you weren't. You wouldn't have to be very old to see it either. Even as young as kindergarten, they start with a crap. I mean, think about this. You know, sugar and spice and everything nice. That's what little girls are made of. Snips and snails and puppy dogs' tails. That's what little boys are made of. Even when I was like, even when I was in single digit ages, I was like, now hold up. Men want to be men who get on this track want to become a woman because they see it's an enviable state. And they get screwed up enough that they pine away for it. Now, I lost my train of thought. Give me a second here. Got to sit and digest. Hmm. It's all about status. So much of it is about status. You take, this argument. You won't hear a single feminist arguing that since there are more men employed working in the sewage system, that there's an unfair balance here, and we need to get more women working down in the sewers. You won't hear that. They were dumbasses when they fought to be added into the military. And they weren't fighting. They weren't pushing to get into the military because they thought they wanted to die for their country. They were fighting to get in because it was a status symbol. And to be fair, that men have done their part to make certain things status. In America, cooking, cooking is women's work. But in, say, France, the cordon bleu, for decades they didn't let women into those cooking schools because it was a status symbol. The irony in French cooking that women struggling to prove themselves as good as any chef, while in America men are portrayed as incapable of making buttered toast without help. Women would be fighting to get locked up in maximum security prison if they thought it would give a boost to their egos. Or perhaps I should say feminists would. You gotta specify. Otherwise, you're sexist. Oh my. Feeling a little blue. Feeling a little bloated. Of course, I am bloated. I'm a big fat lump. I should be up on a platform. It's going to bring me Solo in the Wookiee. Okay. Be back in just a second. When I first heard about My Little Pony, when I first heard about it, I didn't want to see it. I was averse to seeing it. I was like, because among other things, I've seen clips of it, and I'd heard about the first episode, and among other things, I had heard that the only time you saw a male character in the premiere was two male Pegasi pulling a wagon, pulling a chariot like beasts of burden, and that they never spoke. While the female ponies all around them spoke, they only whinnied. And I'm like, okay, what are we going with here? This, they turned it into like the land of the Amazons, where only the female ponies are intelligent. That was what I was figuring they were going to do. There are no depths to which I will not believe a feminist will sink. I've read enough horrifying true life stories not to be surprised by anything anymore. But I finally broke down. People were watching. Oh, but this is really good. And I finally broke down and I watched it. And I watched one episode. I couldn't bring myself to watch it all the way through because it would start to get ridiculous. Like, oh geez, I feel stupid watching it. Click. And then okay, but what happens next? Click. And then I'd watch some more, and eventually I would watch 2 episodes, 3 episodes. By the time they got to Dragon Shy, yeah, I was hooked. I was freebasing the stuff. I was snorting pony dust. You know. Well, the simple fact that it was better than it needed to be. They could have put out just about any crap and it would have sufficed to fill the blank slot for posing as a cartoon. But no, she actually came in. They came in. They did a good show, and it was danged entertaining. And it took them 9 seasons to finally knock all the glitter off. A little gassy. Feeling a little bit off. It's a sad state of affairs. It's a sad thing, really, that it seems like whether you're talking in entertainment or in whether you're talking restaurants or department stores or video game companies or or television or anything. It seems like corporations no longer pass naturally. There's this given idea in capitalism that eventually a company, the bloom will come off the rose, so to speak. That eventually it will decline in quality, and that a competitor will come along that does things better and surpass them. But what we see more and more in so many things is that whether it's a franchise or a company or just about anything you care to name, nothing nothing quietly fades away anymore. They all at some point, even at the pinnacle of their success, they'll whip out the shotgun, plant both barrels against their foot, and pull the trigger. Blam. Uh, Blizzards merge with Activision. Those circus clowns. The My Little Pony franchise, the Star Wars franchise. I mean, that was the goose that laid the golden eggs, if ever was. And Disney managed to take it and just fly it straight into the ground. And Disney overall isn't doing that hot either. They're not making original movies anymore. They're doing live remakes of decades old classics, and the live remakes ink on ice. It's like they're trying to commit Harry Carey, And what's another example? And you look in politics. The idea of politics is that eventually, one guy would pass out of office, and the next guy would come in, and people would vote on him because they preferred him. But no, you know how many? We've had at least 3 or 4 politicians in the United States government that died in office of old age. Strom Thurmond comes to mind. Uh, uh, what was the big fat Kennedy? Not JFK, not RFK. Ted Kennedy. He literally had to drink and party himself to death in order for him to get out of office. Well, what does that tell you? And we're not supposed to have to wait for politicians, especially corrupt ones, to die of old age and dissipation before we can replace them. Now look at these people in the Supreme Court. They're practically rolling them in on IVs and wheelchairs, but no, they're going to be there forever. None of them will let go of that power. None of them will, desperately grasping at it from their casket. They'd rather die than give up the power. But more and more, you see, the only way for things to change over is you have to wait for the corporation or the company or the franchise or to self-destruct. They don't fade into the sunset anymore. There was, when we went from the horse and cart to the automobile, there was a transition. My parents have a painting on their wall. No, it's a print actually. A classic painting is of a watercolor painting of a garage, a country garage. Half the garage is, it has a gas station and pumps and classic car parked out in front, and the other half has a blacksmith shop with horseshoes and an anvil and a farrier. Because this guy was literally in between 2 phases of the country, and there was a transition. But anymore, if it was to happen today, all the horses would have to suddenly just break all 4 legs, keel over, and die all at the same time before we would transition. Change seems to have to be forced by catastrophe. That's why I'm looking at this disease tearing through the Wuhan virus tearing through China right now, and I'm like, oh crap. My first thought is that God got tired of waiting for them to pull their heads out of their rear ends and to change things over. But in a more materialistic sense, it's just a simple matter. A tyranny, an oppressive regime is not going to be very good at things like hygiene, disease control. Considering that an oppressive government's main tool is ethnic cleansings, it's not going to be particularly hot at saving the people from an epidemic as it is as opposed to quarantining and killing them off. Granny has a cold, shoot her. She's betrayed the state. Uh, but I rattled on about that yesterday. Let's be fair. We see more people die every year from the flu. But I think what has got people so panicked about this Wuhan virus is the way it spreads. I'm not sure what it is that's got people really scared of this thing, but I believe that's the pivotal part. Remember Ebola? Remember the flesh-eating virus? Remember swine flu and bird flu and all those other things that were supposed to, you know, rip through all the civilized world like shit through a goose? What we're seeing here is a virus ripping through an uncivilized part of the world. For all their sky rises and their big cities and their mass-produced junk and their air pollution, they're not a civilized part of the world. They're in the clutches of a tyranny. A tyrannical communist party that murders its own people on a regular basis en masse. This is why Hong Kong, the young people in Hong Kong are fighting so desperately to keep Hong Kong autonomous. We betrayed them. The civilized world betrayed Hong Kong when we turned them back over to China. We knew what they were. Like the old story of the scorpion and frog. We knew what they were when they got on board. We knew what they were. We didn't care. We wanted that yummy, yummy Chinese money, and we were willing to trade over a city full of free people just to get it, or just to make sure we got it. It never occurs to people that bend over backwards for China. If we just said no, we would have them over a barrel. They can't even wipe their own butts without giving themselves the hantavirus. Come on. If it weren't for the constant influx of American dollars and American influence, everything that they've built in that country, it would be utterly effed up in no time flat. As it is, they dang near choking half the planet to death. Because they don't know how to burn. They're too cheap, greedy, and lazy to use technology that'll burn fossil fuels cleaner. You can practically carve the air in blocks and sell it. The word out is that if you're fairly healthy, if you're fairly healthy, the Wuhan virus isn't much more of a threat than the flu. If you know, and they got people out there eating like frogs and bats and crap. You can't tell me they're doing it because they're so delicious. That just says poor and willing to eat anything to me. You know what I'd love to have right now? I'd love to have access to is an incinerator. Just and instead of having to bag crap up, just open the door, boom, whoosh, burn all the trash instead of wasting time bagging it up and dragging it out. And yeah, 2020, the year 2020 has been kind of rough, to say the least. Every year we go back. Every let's see, for the past 3 or 4 years, we've all looked at. Oh, last year was rough. Hopefully, this next year will be better. And the next year, we start out with like hurricanes and earthquakes and Australia bursting into flame and new horror viruses springing out of China. Like hip hop hooray. My, I'm sort of running out of steam at the moment. Running out of crap to talk about. I feel like my grandparents, and that's never good. Because my grandparents, my grandmother, my mother's father, he passed away in an old folks' home. Barely aware of where he was, so far as I could see. My father's parents, I take more after my father in certain, in physical health regards, and his mother and his father, uh, ended their days in a mobile home, lying in a hospital bed in their living room. Just wondering if my life meant anything. I'm reaching a point tonight where I'm starting getting morbid and maudlin and bummed out, dude. And I really need to do that. Just if I sit here and talk out loud long enough, I eventually depress myself. In case you're wondering, that's a Dr. Pepper I just opened. Well, I'm not. It's not going to do anybody any good if I'm just going to sit here and silently whittle the hours away. That's not to anybody's benefit. Things are bothering me. Things are brewing on my mind, and I'm really not sure where I'm going to go or what I'm going to do next. I don't know. I don't want to live like this. I certainly don't want to die like this. I never wanted to die like this. I didn't want to end up wasting away in some ratty rundown trailer, not even able to get outside anymore. I just woke up one day and my God had taken my legs away, basically. Just sitting here popping can after can of soda. I feel like, you know, I'm stopping now because I'm the more I'm talking, the more I'm dwelling on things that I shouldn't be brooding over, and the more I brood over them, the crappier my attitude gets, and more ungrateful I get, and the more resentful I get over things I have no right to be resentful over. God had blessed me more than I deserved to be, and I did not make of it what I should have, and so here I am. In the end, the only one to blame for where I am right now is me. And the only one to blame if I don't fight my way out is me. I just I just wish I could find the fight in me, I give up too easy. I've always been a giver upper, a quitter. Well, excuse me. Okay, it is let's see, it is 9 o'clock at night. We've been going for 2 hours. I think that's long enough. So I will be seeing you later. If you all have a commission you'd like to make, contact me. My email, my website, my Patreon, my Ko-fi. Do you pronounce it coffee, Ko-fi, or Ko-fi? I don't know. ko-fi.com/RH Junior. I'll catch y'all later. Y'all take care and God bless you. All right? Good night.